I'm Jacob Stone. I'm 31 years old, and for as long as I can remember, cars have been in my blood. My earliest memories are sitting on a beat-up stool in my dad's garage, watching him work under the hood of some old Chevy that looked like it had no business being on the road. He'd wipe the grease off his hands, grin at me, and tell me what each part did, even though I was too young to really understand. What stuck with me wasn't the technical stuff. It was the way his eyes lit up when he explained it. To him, fixing cars wasn't just a job. It was a craft, something you put your heart into, something that gave people freedom. That passion stuck with me. I wasn't the best student in high school, and I knew early on college wasn't going to be my thing. While other kids were dreaming about corporate careers or tech startups, I was happiest with a wrench in my hand. I went to trade school after graduation, got certified, and worked my way through some local shops before finally opening my own place a few years ago. It's not glamorous, but it's mine, and I take pride in it. Now, I need to rewind a bit to when I met Vanessa Grant, the woman who would later become my fiancée. We met in the most unromantic place possible, my shop. She brought in her car, some sleek luxury sedan that needed brake work. I still remember the way she walked in, polished, confident, like she was used to owning every room she entered. She had this tailored coat on, perfect nails, hair that looked like she just stepped out of a salon. She stood out against the smell of oil and the sound of air compressors. At first, I thought she was just another client who'd drop off the keys and leave, but she stayed. She asked me questions, not the usual half-polite stuff customers ask. She actually seemed interested. She laughed when I explained things in simple terms, not in a mocking way, but like she appreciated my passion. Before she left, she asked if I ever went out for coffee in the area. I was caught off guard. She was way out of my league, or so I thought, but I said yes. And that coffee turned into dinner, and that dinner turned into a string of dates, and before I knew it, we were together. In the early days, it felt like one of those opposites attract stories you read about. She worked in corporate marketing, always dressed sharp, constantly networking, her phone buzzing with emails and Slack notifications. I was the guy who came home smelling like motor oil, with callous hands and shirts that had permanent stains. But somehow it worked, or at least I thought it did. She told me she admired how driven I was, how I followed my passion instead of chasing a paycheck. She said she loved how grounded I was compared to the fast-paced, image-obsessed world she lived in. And for a while, I believed her. We had good times, I won't lie. She introduced me to a side of life I wasn't used to. Cocktail bars, rooftop parties, vacations where you don't just drive to a lake, but actually fly somewhere. I, in turn, showed her the simple joys I grew up with. Nights grilling in the backyard, bonfires with friends, road trips with no real destination. We balanced each other. At least, that's what I told myself. But looking back, there were cracks even then. Little comments she'd make that didn't sit right with me, even though I brushed them off, like when we were out with her friends, and one of them asked me what I did. I told them proudly about my shop, and Vanessa would chime in with something like, "Yeah, Jacob's great with his hands. He can fix anything." It always got a laugh, but the way she said it, it wasn't admiration. It was like she was reducing me to some handy accessory she kept around. I told myself it was just playful. I wanted to believe that. Still, as our relationship deepened, those little comments kept piling up. Meeting her family for the first time should have been a big step. Instead, it turned into another reminder of just how different our worlds were. Her parents were polite enough, but I could see the way her dad sized me up when I shook his hand. He asked what I did, and when I explained, he nodded slowly and said, "Honest work, I suppose." Suppose. That one word stung more than I expected. Vanessa tried to smooth it over later, saying her dad was old-fashioned and didn't mean anything by it. I swallowed my pride and let it go, but it stuck in the back of my mind. Then came her coworkers. Whenever we were out with them, I always felt like the odd man out. They'd talk shop about clients, campaigns, quarterly goals, all in this jargon-filled language that might as well have been another planet. I'd smile, nod, sip my drink, and wait for the topic to change. Sometimes they'd ask me about my work, and before I could even answer, Vanessa would jump in. making some joke about me being a grease guy or car whisperer. Everyone would laugh. And I'd laugh too, even though it cut a little deeper each time. But you know how it is when you're in love. You make excuses. You tell yourself they don't mean it the way it sounds. You focus on the good moments, the ones that make you feel seen and valued. And Vanessa did give me those, too. She'd surprise me with lunch at the shop. She bragged to me about how I could fix things around the house that she'd never even attempt. She said she couldn't wait to start a life together, that she loved how dependable I was. So when I proposed, it felt right. I thought we were building something solid. Except somewhere between that proposal and the months that followed, the cracks became harder to ignore. Planning the wedding brought out a different side of Vanessa. She became obsessed with appearances. What venue would impress her friends? What dress would look best in photos? What guest list would show her social circle she had made it? When it came to my side of things, my family, my friends, my world, she seemed less interested, like it was an afterthought. I remember one night we were going over the guest list, and I mentioned inviting my buddy Mark, who's basically like a brother to me. She wrinkled her nose and said, "Do we really have to invite him? He's nice, but, not exactly polished." Polished. That word again. Like we were putting together some curated display instead of celebrating our lives. Another time, she suggested I upgrade my wardrobe before the wedding because, in her words, you don't want to look like you just walked out of the garage in our photos. I get it. Suits and weddings go hand in hand. But the way she said it, it wasn't about looking nice. It was about fitting into her image. All of this built up quietly in the background of our relationship. I still loved her. I still wanted to believe she respected me. But deep down, I was starting to wonder if she really saw me as an equal partner, or if I was just a box she checked off to complete the picture of her perfect life. And then came the holiday party. The one she was so excited about, the one where she said she couldn't wait for me to meet all her colleagues properly. She told me it would be fun, that it would give me a chance to see her world, that she wanted to show me off. I was nervous as hell, but I agreed because I wanted to support her, because I wanted to believe we were still on the same team. That night, standing in front of the mirror adjusting a tie I almost never wore, I felt like I was about to walk into enemy territory. But I told myself it would be fine, that she loved me for who I was, not for how I looked or what I did, that she'd have my back the way I always tried to have hers. The night of Vanessa's office holiday party felt like walking into a different universe. Her company had rented out an upscale downtown venue, all glass walls and chandeliers, the kind of place where valet attendants were lined up outside. I parked my old pickup in a garage 3 blocks away because the idea of handing over those keys to a valet wearing white gloves just felt wrong. By the time we walked up, Vanessa was glowing. She thrived in places like this, her red dress tailored perfectly, her heels clicking on the marble floor like she owned the place. I tugged at the collar of my suit. It wasn't new, just one I wore to weddings and funerals, and tried to push down the feeling that I didn't belong. Inside, the room buzzed with polished laughter, glasses clinking and soft jazz humming in the background. Everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. I caught our reflection in a window, her flawless, me slightly stiff, adjusted my tie again, and I could already sense a gap between us widening in real time. She introduced me to people almost immediately, moving through the crowd like she rehearsed it. "This is Jacob, my fiancé," she'd say with a proud smile, but then she'd undercut it with something like, "Don't let the suit fool you. He usually lives in grease-stained shirts." People would laugh politely, and I laughed too, even though each jab made my chest tighten a little. After about an hour, I found myself in a circle with 3 of her colleagues. One guy, tall, slick hair, expensive watch, asked me what I did. I told him honestly. "I run an auto repair shop. Small place, but it's mine." Before I could say more, Vanessa chimed in with a laugh. "Isn't that cute? He's like a modern-day grease monkey." The group chuckled. I forced a smile, but inside it felt like a slap. I glanced at her, hoping she'd see it in my eyes. She just sipped her wine like nothing happened. I tried to shake it off. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But the rest of the night felt heavy. Every time I opened my mouth to join a conversation, She'd redirect or make light of it. When one woman asked if I enjoyed running my own business, I started explaining how much I liked helping people get back on the road quickly, and Vanessa cut in, "He's underselling himself. Jacob can practically rebuild a car blindfolded. Not exactly useful in this crowd, but hey, at least our cars are safe." The group laughed again. My hands tightened around my glass. By the time dinner rolled around, I was emotionally exhausted. I kept reminding myself I was there for her, that it didn't matter if I fit in or not. But then came the toast. Vanessa stood up, her glass raised, her smile bright and confident. She thanked her team for their hard work, praised the company's achievements, and then, to my surprise, shifted the attention toward me. "And a special thanks to my fiancé," she said, looking right at me with that charming smile. "Not exactly a corporate guy, but he's great with his hands. If anyone's car breaks down tonight, you know who to call." The room erupted in laughter. Some people clapped, others smirked. All eyes were on me, and not in a way that felt good. It was like I'd been reduced to the party's mechanic mascot. I forced a grin and raised my glass, but inside, something broke. That moment branded itself into my memory. After the toast, I excused myself and went to the restroom just to breathe. I stared at myself in the mirror. Same suit, same face, same guy I was proud to be a few hours earlier, but now I felt small, out of place, like my entire worth had been stripped down to grease and wrenches. My stomach churned. I thought about walking out, but I didn't. I told myself I couldn't make a scene, not at her event. When I came back, Vanessa was surrounded by a group of people, laughing, soaking up attention. She barely noticed me slip back in. For the rest of the night, I stayed quiet. I laughed when expected, nodded when spoken to, and counted the minutes until we could leave. On the drive home, silence filled the truck. Finally, I broke it. "Did you have to say that?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my hands gripped the wheel tighter than they should have. She looked at me like she didn't understand. "Say what?" "That toast. The whole not a corporate guy, but great with his hands thing. You made me feel like a joke." She rolled her eyes. "Jacob, it was a joke. Lighten up." Everyone laughed. "They liked you." "No," I said firmly. "They laughed at me. Vanessa, at my expense." Her tone sharpened. "You're being sensitive. You know I appreciate what you do. But come on, you can't expect people in my world to get excited about cars. I was just trying to make you relatable." Relatable? That word stung almost as much as grease monkey. I didn't push it further. I drove in silence, my jaw tight, while she scrolled through her phone, already liking and commenting on photos from the night. When we got home, she kissed me on the cheek, said she had fun, and went straight to bed. I stayed up in the living room, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell had just happened. In the days that followed, I tried to brush it off, but the weight lingered. I replayed the moment over and over again. Each time, it cut a little deeper. I started noticing how often she made those little digs, how often I laughed along just to keep the peace. It wasn't just a party, it was a pattern, and now I couldn't ignore it anymore. That holiday party wasn't just another night. It was a night I realized Vanessa didn't see me the way she claimed to. To her, I wasn't Jacob Stone, a man who built something from the ground up, who turned a passion into a business. I was just a punchline. And that realization planted a seed of doubt I couldn't shake. The weeks after that holiday party were heavier than I expected. On the surface, nothing had really changed. Vanessa still kissed me goodbye in the morning, still sent me texts about dinner plans or funny memes, still curled up beside me at night. But underneath, something in me had shifted. I couldn't shake that moment of standing in front of her entire company, reduced to the punchline of her toast. At the shop, I threw myself into work. I get lost in the sound of tools clinking, the smell of oil, the satisfaction of solving problems no one else could fix. Customers came in frazzled, worried their car was done for, and left smiling when I handed them back their keys. That was pride to me. That was real. But every time I felt good about what I did, her voice would creep back in. "Not a corporate guy, but great with his hands." It replayed like a cruel loop. I didn't want to resent her, so I tried talking to her again a few nights later. She was sitting at the counter, scrolling on her laptop, a glass of wine beside her. "Vanessa," I started. "Do you even realize how much that toast bothered me?" She sighed without looking up. "Jacob, are we still on this?" "Yes," I said firmly, because it wasn't just a joke. It made me feel like I don't matter to you unless I'm a story to laugh at. Finally, she closed the laptop and looked at me. "You're overthinking. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just want to keep things light." That's how people connect in those environments. Humor. You should be thanking me for making you approachable. Her words stung. Approachable. Relatable. Cute. Not once did she say respected. From then on, I noticed myself pulling back. At dinners with her friends, I keep quiet rather than risk being undercut. When she bragged about her project at work, I'd nod and listen, but I stopped sharing much about my own day. Why bother if it was just going to be brushed aside? One night, about 3 weeks after the party, she asked why I seemed off. "I don't feel like you're proud of me," I admitted. She tilted her head, looking at me like I'd said something in another language. "Of course I am. You're hardworking. You own your own business. That's great, Jacob. But you have to understand, my world is different. People value degrees, promotions, connections. They don't get dirty hands." The way she said it, dirty hands, felt like she was putting a wall between us. I wanted to tell her I'd chosen this life, that I was proud of it, that fixing cars wasn't some fallback plan but my passion. But I didn't. I just nodded and said I understood, even though I didn't. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every subtle jab she'd ever made. The jokes about me smelling like gasoline, the way she wrinkled her nose at my fingernails when they were stained with oil, the way she joked to her friends that I was married to the shop before me. Individually, maybe none of it was damning, but together, it painted a picture. And the picture was clear. She didn't see me as her equal. The doubt grew louder in my head with each passing day. The breaking point came at a brunch with her parents. We were all seated at a fancy cafe. Sunlight streaming through the windows, her mom raving about Vanessa's latest promotion. Then her dad turned to me and asked politely how business was going. I opened my mouth to answer, and before I could get 3 words out, Vanessa jumped in. "Oh, Dad, you know Jacob. He spends more time under cars than with people. But he loves it. Grease is practically his cologne." They all laughed. Even her dad chuckled. I smiled tightly, but inside, I felt something collapse. That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to change. To her, I would always be the grease monkey, the novelty, the blue-collar contrast to her polished world. And the worst part? She didn't even see what she was doing. To her, these were harmless jokes. To me, they were cuts deep enough to scar. That night, after we got home, I sat in my truck in the driveway long after she'd gone inside. I stared at the steering wheel, at the familiar cracks in the leather, at the smell of oil still clinging to my clothes. For the first time since we got engaged, I wondered if we were really meant to be. Part 2 had left me wounded. Part 3 left me questioning everything. And I knew the next decision I made about us could change my entire life. The decision to end things came quicker than I thought it would. For weeks, I had been balancing on a thread, trying to convince myself that love meant compromise, that maybe I was just being overly sensitive. But the truth kept flashing at me in every conversation, every look, every so-called joke. She didn't respect me. And without respect, there was no partnership. The final push came one Saturday evening. We had been invited to another gathering, this time at a colleague's house. I told her I wasn't in the mood, that I'd rather stay home, that maybe she should go without me. She pressed, saying it would look bad if her fiancé kept skipping events. That phrasing, asterisk look bad asterisk, set off something inside me. So I went. The night played out exactly like the others. She held court, charming everyone. I hovered on the edges, trying to blend in, and once again, she found a way to make me small. A joke about me spending more time with carburetors than conversations. Another line about me probably being more comfortable under the hood of a car than in a living room. People laughed, of course. She grinned, basking in it. I stared at my drink, knowing I couldn't do this anymore. On the drive home, I told her, My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of everything I'd held back. Vanessa, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the butt of your jokes. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me. She blinked at me like I'd spoken in another language. Are you serious? Over this. It's not just this. It's everything. The way you talk about me. The way you look at what I do. I love my work. I'm proud of it. And you made it clear that you're not proud of me. That's not love. She scoffed, called me dramatic, said I was throwing away something good over insecurities. I didn't argue. I just took the ring off, placed it gently in her hand, and told her I hoped she found someone who fit better into the image she wanted to project. When I walked away that night, I felt strangely light. Heartbroken, yes, but also free. The fallout wasn't pretty. She told her friends, our mutual circle, that I was insecure and couldn't handle a joke. She posted cryptic things online, painting herself as the victim. But here's the thing about people. They notice more than you think. Her colleagues remembered the toast. Her friends remembered the comments. Slowly, people started putting the pieces together. Some reached out privately. One of her coworkers messaged me. Honestly, I never liked the way she talked about you. She made it sound like you were a project, not a partner. That stung, but it was a confirmation I needed. In the weeks after, I focused on myself. I poured energy into my shop, started offering weekend classes for kids interested in mechanics, even upgraded some of my tools. I traveled for the first time in years, using the money from the sold engagement ring to take a trip I'd always dreamed about. And in that space, away from her shadow, I rediscovered pride, not just in what I do, but in who I am. Looking back, I realized the breakup wasn't about one toast, one comment, or one night. It was about the truth those moments revealed. She didn't see me as her equal. And without equality, there can't be love. If you're reading this and you've ever felt small in a relationship, like your passions, your work, your very identity are being minimized, please hear me. You deserve better. Respect isn't optional. Love isn't built on tearing each other down. I walked away, and though it hurt, it was the best decision I ever made. Because I'd rather be alone and respected than together and diminished. And if my story does anything, I hope it reminds someone else to do the same. Walk away. Demand better. Because you're worth it. And with that, our story comes to an end. But the real story begins with your thoughts. What would you do if you were in this situation? Let me know in the comments.